One of the questions I get all the time from 35-year-olds who are considering becoming a Pilates instructor is, do you think I'm too old? And the answer is hell no, you're not too old. And I am here to talk about that with Loretta Mazzola. Loretta, welcome.
Hi, Raph. How are you? Thank you for having me.
Oh, I'm awesome, and I'm really delighted to have you on the show. I know we've talked many times off air, and I'm looking forward to having this on air convo. So can you introduce yourself to the Pilates stratosphere, please?
Well, my name is Loretta Mazzola, and I'm 66 years old. I recently graduated Breathe Education's certificate in Mat and Reformer, and starting my career as a Pilates teacher. It's a second career. I'm retired as a New York State court officer, and and starting something different.
So, Loretta, we're here today to really just talk about your story of starting this, why you decided to start this second career and what inspired you, and, your journey that has brought you here and what's next for you. And I don't necessarily want your age to be the prism for this whole, conversation, but I think it is a nice place to start maybe for people who are out there because, like I said in the intro, I get so many people really of all ages, from like 21 and above saying like, do you think I'm too old? Have I missed my chance? And, I always, although I do work hard to be like the Dalai Lama and to be empathic when 30-year-olds ask me if they're too old to do this thing. I don't always succeed, and I often chuckle a little bit on the inside and think, ask me again when you're 50, 60, 70, because my experience at 51 is like, I remember when I was a kid looking and thinking like, oh, that kind of, grizzled old teacher that I had, they were probably like, now thinking about it, they were probably like 25, And I look back now at 51 and think, oh, that person would have been so fresh-faced and so rosy-cheeked, so naive to the ways of the world. And it's amazing how your perspective changes on what, quote, old, end quote, is as you, as I've aged, I've found like, oh, I remember looking forward when I was in my teens. I was born in 1971, and looking forward to the turn of the century, the year 2000, this mythical year that was going to happen in the future, and thinking how old. I used to calculate how old will I be, and I was going to be 28, and I was like, oh my goodness, I'll be over the hill, I'll be almost too old to enjoy the experience of the turn of the century. Like my time will be done, my life will be over by then. And it's like, of course, now looking back, I think 28, oh, how young I was at 28, how much I had yet to learn and discover and live and grow. And now I'm sure when I look back at 71, I'll look back at my 51-year-old self and think how young and naive I was and how I didn't understand the ways of the world. So, so I do chuckle sometimes when 30-year-olds ask me if they're too old to become a Pilates instructor. And so I'd love to know, to start out by asking you, what was going on in your life that inspired you to make this change, to become a Pilates instructor at 66 years of age?
Well, I've been taking classes at that point for about 10 years. And I started taking classes because my doctor, I took a bone density test and I had osteopenia. And my doctor suggested I take Pilates classes. So I was like, oh, okay. Had no idea what it was. And I live in a very small town. We have one studio in my town. And I started going. And from the very beginning, I loved it. I really loved it. So I had been taking classes for about 10 years. I wanted to take the course to become an instructor because I was so passionate about it for a while now. But the way it was, the way they had it didn't fit into my schedule. It didn't fit into my finances. So I just kept on taking classes. This year, after the pandemic, once the pandemic started, of course, there were no in-studio classes, and I was taking some online classes. And that's when I found another instructor who really inspired me. I started taking classes with Anula Myberg. And I realized...
Shout out to Anula.
Oh, yeah, definitely. She's amazing. I realized how much there was to learn just by taking her classes. The classes I would take were awesome, but I felt like once I started taking her classes, there was so much more. And I decided I really wanted to find out more for myself. And that's how I started. I did not think about teaching. I think I spoke to you in the beginning, saying that I'm not really interested in teaching. I was doing this for myself to learn more, to see what it was all about, to know how to do the exercises. And that was really it. I mean, it was just the right time for me. I asked her, she actually recommended Breathe Education. And I looked you guys up and I was able to work it out. And being all online, it fit into my schedule. Finances were a little bit of a challenge, but I worked it out. And that was it. And I started on my journey.
So at what point did you retire from the courts system?
I retired in May of 2018. So about 4 years ago.
Okay. So you've been retired for a little while now.
Yeah.
And so this was a kind of a hobby and a passion of yours that has expanded to fill more space in your life. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I always kept busy though. I'm the type of person where I don't sit down, when I'm home, I'm always moving. I'm always doing something. After I retired, I started, painting with watercolor. I started sewing. I garden. I have 9 grandchildren. So, I'm always busy, but this was always like, for the past 10 years, this has always been a part of my life that I felt I did for myself, and it made me feel good. And, going back to the age, I don't feel like, to me, it's just a number. I don't feel like I'm 66. I probably don't act like I'm 66. And I don't think I move like I'm 66. So yeah, that's pretty much it. I thought it was time. It was time.
Yeah, it's funny what you say. And I want to come back to that in a minute about, not feeling your age and not moving your age, because I agree with you on that. But just let me understand the chronology a little bit better in your process here. So you retired in 2018. You're keeping busy. You're painting. You're gardening. You're hanging out with your grandkids, and you're doing Pilates, regularly. And then you wanted to take your Pilates further for your own practice, for your own understanding. You took some classes with Anula, and were those classes online? That was in the pandemic, right? You had to. Yeah. Is that why you started taking classes with her? Yeah. So she was teaching on Zoom, and so you had a little bit of an awakening, it sounds like, with her classes, that you were like, oh, like there's lots more to this that I didn't realize.
Exactly. I mean, taking classes for 10 years, I didn't know about semicircle or snake, just different exercises. I was like, wow, there is so much more that I'd like to know.
And so that really kind of whetted your appetite to do some kind of teacher training. But you really, at the start, and I remember our conversation, you said that you had no ambition to actually teach. This was just for you. It's just a personal development and a project.
Exactly, exactly. The other thing was, besides taking her classes, I started following um, different Pilates instructors on Instagram, and that really got to me too. It was like, wow, they're so good, and there's so much. Yeah,
So you really got the bug.
I did. I did.
Do you have a Pilates mug?
I don't have a mug, but I have some T-shirts.
Have to get you a mug. All right. And so, all right. So I want to come back and understand in a minute about how you made the shift from, this being a personal development exercise, pure and simple, to now feeling like, oh no, this is a second career for me. This is like, I want to teach. I want to pass this on to other people. So I want to understand that part of your journey in a moment, but I do want to circle back to what you mentioned before about not feeling your age. And I mean, that's my experience. And like, as well, I'm 15 years behind you at this stage, but I definitely feel like, well, no, I'm just like same as I was when I was 35. Got a couple more grey hairs, and but but I don't feel any different, you know. Um, and you said like you don't move like a 66-year-old, and I just want to double click on that. There was a recent systematic review that came out, had over 3 million participants in it, and they looked at adherence to physical activity guidelines around the world. And what they found was less than 17% of adults, like 17%, of adults adhere to physical activity guidelines. So basically get enough exercise in a week, which is like 150 minutes of moderate intensity cardio where you're slightly out of breath, plus 2 to 3 resistance training sessions like Pilates, where you're working your muscle groups to near fatigue. And only 17% of adults consistently achieve that. And so that when we, many of the things that we associate with aging, like, becoming weaker and stiffer and less physically able and having more chronic diseases, it's really hard to disentangle how much of this is actually part of the normal aging process and how much of it is just a result of people being physically inactive for decades at a stretch. And in fact, when we look at very active people in their 70s, 80s and 90s, they are, way more fit and strong and flexible and have better balance and coordination and better general health than, fewer chronic diseases, less diabetes, less cancer, less, obesity, less heart disease, all of this, less depression, less Alzheimer's, just from being physically active. So a lot of these, I guess, kind of like ailments that we or sort of physical, challenges that we typically associate with aging, are often not purely related to aging, or in many cases not at all a result of aging. They're a result of just, well, when you're 66 and you've been inactive for 4 decades, there's just a greater accumulation of inactivity there than when you're 26 and you've been active for 2 decades, right? It's just the number of years of inactivity rather than the number of years of living per se. And so, yeah, you don't move like a 66-year-old who's inactive. You move like a fit, healthy, strong 66-year-old.
Very true, very true. And I find that also there had been periods of time, and it's usually around this time of year where I kind of slow down on my activity. Like when I was taking classes, usually from October to January, it's a very busy time for me, and I wouldn't take classes. And I could feel it. You talked about the stiffness, and, I'd sit on the couch watching TV at night. When I got up, I was like, oh, geez, and then once I got back to classes, it was gone. And yeah. It's a big thing. It's a really big thing. And I've always kept active, not really anything structured besides Pilates, but just always doing stuff. And I just feel good about it. But once I stop taking classes, or I don't take classes for a while, I'm a little bit in that spot now because I was on vacation for 2 weeks and then I came home and I'm sick, and, so hopefully by the end of this week, I'll be back to normal.
Well, I was sick all last week, and I was teaching tutorials still because luckily, being online, you can't infect anyone when you're teaching. So I was still teaching tutorials, and we were doing like spine twist and saw and semicircle. And I was thinking, oh, that looks so good. Like I was feeling so stiff and so like achy, and I just really was craving that movement. And so, this morning, I really felt a lot better. Went down and did a bunch of spine stretch and some twists. And I feel so much better now. It's amazing. It really is so, so wonderful. So, all right. So tell me about the journey for you from really, coming into this adventure feeling like, okay, so this is just a personal development exercise. Well, not just, this is a personal development exercise for me. I want to deepen my own understanding of my own body, of the exercises, of the techniques, etc. And then the journey from there to like becoming a teacher. Like, I know I want to pass this on to others. I want to pay it forward. Like, tell me about that transition.
A big part of it was the Breathe Education course, the way it's taught. We had to do practice teaching, and we did practice teaching with our classmates, which the first one was like, okay, it's kind of weird doing this. It felt uncomfortable. Everybody felt uncomfortable, but we were all in the same space. We were all in the same place in the course. So after the first or second time, it didn't feel uncomfortable because we were all discussing it, and that's what helped me. And I found that I really enjoyed helping people move, explaining how to do things, showing people how to move. And they told me that I did a good job. My classmates said, "Oh, you're really good at this." I'm like, "Really? Oh, maybe I am." And that's where it started. Just the whole practice teaching thing is so important. And to me, like, I think in other courses, I guess I don't really know, but I would imagine in other courses where there's maybe 5 people in a class and it's not online, but just, regular, you go out and teach. I don't know who you teach. All I know is teaching other people who are doing it the same as you helped me. Like, not going out and teaching a class that I didn't know, or teaching people that I didn't know, or who were just not in the same space as I was. That made a big difference to me, that we were all doing the same thing. And then I really felt that I enjoyed it.
Yeah. I mean, that's been our experience as well. Like when we used to be an in-person training company, and so we used to do exactly what you said. Like, we'd have 5 people or 7 people in the program, and then we'd send them off to do practice teaching outside of class hours. They'd have to find, like, rope in their family or their whoever to do the practice teaching. And that's certainly like very important and valuable, and much better than not doing any practice, like a bazillion times better. But what we've found over time of being online is, because we've got, like, I think there are like 90 students in your cohort doing the training with you. And so what that, all around the world. And so what that means is you're not limited to the same 5 humans to practice with, and you can, like, stick with the same people if you find a group that you really like. Mm-hmm. But what a lot of people find is just the variety of getting, like, it's much easier to set people up. But then, because you've got people in the exact same stage of the course as you are, like you said, it's like they're giving you feedback that is, like, relevant to where you're at in your development and what you're kind of working through in terms of technique and teaching skills and all that. And so, whereas like your mum or your grandkids or whoever, with the best intentions in the world, can't give you great quality feedback because they don't know thing number one about.
It's so true. It's so true. The feedback that I got was amazing. And then I made sure there might have been 1 or 2 people in the class that I knew would not tell me stuff that I just wanted to hear. Like, I knew they would give me constructive criticism when I needed it, not just telling me, "Oh, you're great, and then learning from them also makes a big difference.
Yeah. And it's always nice to hear that you're great, and you are great. And I think I'm one of
Thank
those
you.
people that's told you that. And I wouldn't say that if it wasn't true. But when you're learning and skill, you definitely need constructive feedback about, okay, here's what you can do better, move your foot more in this direction, straighten your knee more, use this word instead of that word, put on this number of springs instead of that number of springs, whatever it might be. Like you need to hear those things to get better.
Exactly. And then you also see how other people, what their technique is in teaching,
Right.
and you could get some good ideas.
Right. All right. So to what extent, if at all, maybe I'm completely wrong here, so tell me, was that a confidence thing, right? When I say that a confidence thing, I mean your change of mind or change of goal from this, being a self-development exercise to becoming a teacher. Like, was it the case that at the start you just kind of didn't conceive that you would be able to be a teacher, and then when you started to realize, oh, hold on, I could be a great teacher, then that became something that you sort of allowed yourself to aspire to, or was it something different?
Well, it's kind of like that, because I always thought in my head that just because you know something doesn't mean you could teach it.
And that's true.
You could be an expert in something, but it doesn't mean that you could teach it.
That is true.
Yeah. And I also find that if you really love something, it's easier to teach. And I just found that, wow, I could do this. That was basically it. I'm like, wow, I like doing it. I think part of it too, we had a group, maybe about 10 of us, that we always kept in touch. And I think part of it was most of them were much younger. There was another woman in the class just a few years younger than me, but everybody else was much younger. And I kind of, for want of a better saying, I kind of took charge. Like when we had a practice teaching and everybody was talking about everything else, I'd be like, okay, what are we going to do? And I think they liked it. That somebody kind of, was taking charge and leading them in a direction. And again, I just found that I really enjoyed it.
You know what? I think that is something that I've learned over decades, and it's weird that it takes decades to learn it, but that, like, when I was younger, I was much more like that. Like, hey, everyone, what do you want to do? Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first? Let's talk about the weekend, whatever. And now I'm much more like, okay, everyone, let's get to work. Do you want to go first? Great, let's go. And paradoxically, like, I think, trying to remember back to my mindset when I used to be more kind of laissez-faire about things, is like I didn't want to kind of impose my will on others or sort of boss people around or anything. So I wanted to, to give people the full autonomy. But the paradox is that what I've discovered is, like, mostly people really appreciate when there's some clear direction and, like, structure. Like you said, when you took charge, people are like, oh, great, someone's taken charge. Awesome.
It's true, because then otherwise you don't get anything done. You have an hour to do this practice teaching, and you spend the whole, the first half hour, just like you said, oh, what I did this weekend and what I'm going to do here. And, then you don't get anything in. But I had a great group of women that I practiced with, and we still try to, not around the holidays as much, but we get together at least we're trying to get together 3 times a week. We have a spreadsheet. Someone will put down they're going to teach, and whoever is going to attend. And it's kind of like giving each other free classes, but also getting the experience of teaching.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Did you have any, so far, I mean, you strike me as somebody who's just kind of a very straightforward sort of a person. Like, I imagine with you, what you see is what you get. And if you think a thing, you say it most of the time. And if you say a thing, you mean it. That's my impression of you.
That's me.
So, I mean, did you have any doubts or challenges along the way? Was there anything any demons you wrestled with? Were there any like mechanical challenges that you had with it? You said the payments were a struggle for you initially.
Yeah, well, the payments, I don't like to be in debt. So before I even signed up, I figured out a way, using the credit cards or whatever, to pay for the course where I'm not paying any interest on it. I was able to do it with no interest. That was like the main thing. And I'm still paying it off. But between that and, I had my doubts about, I do have some physical issues. They're not, big, but my hands get numb. And I worried about that when I'm doing exercises, if I'm holding onto the foot bar or whatever, is that going to be a problem for me? Which it turns out it's not. I also find that my memory is not what it used to be. And I know but the other part of my story is I have 31 years of being clean and sober. So, I think all the years before that of living a crazy life, it affected my memory a little bit. So that worried me, that I wouldn't be able to do the course and to remember things. But again, because of the way the course was done, the first week it was learning to learn. And that helped me tremendously. The practice testing, where you watch something, you do it, and then you check yourself, record yourself and you check yourself and then go back to it. That helped tremendously. The distributive practice, I think it was called, of spreading it out over the week, like what you have to do. Don't do 8 hours of studying. If you have to do 8 hours, do an hour and whatever each day. That stuff all helped. That gave me a little more confidence. And I remembered a lot, just going over everything and doing the practice testing really helped me a lot. And that was my fear. My fear was the whole memory thing, and not retaining information, and just a few little physical things that I worried about. I used to sit here too and say, geez, I hope I don't get sick or something before I finish the course. What if I get some kind of crazy disease? I don't know why I think like that sometimes, but but I'm still here. I'm healthy.
Yeah, you made it.
I did.
And so it sounds like you didn't have any real physical concerns around will I be able, I mean, you said your hands, but you sounded quite excited by learning semicircle and tendon stretch and, all those exercises.
I am. The thing is too, the other thing that was said to me was, you don't have to be able to do the exercise to teach it. There are still a lot of exercises I cannot do. I still can't do a rollover without modifying it. Inverting on the mat is really hard for me, but I keep practicing and I could teach it. I might not be able to do the full expression of the exercise without modifying it, but I could explain it and I could teach it to somebody. And that's the other thing. Before I took the course, I didn't know about modifying any exercise. I could, it taught me, oh, you could modify it. You could add a bolster. You could shorten the lever, decrease the range of motion to have success in doing the exercise. So that helped me a lot too.
Well, I think, and that is a common misconception that people have, is that you have to be better than your clients at doing the exercises in order to teach. And that's just not remotely true. Like, if that were the case, like imagine we like think about the Olympics, like only the gold medalist could teach the silver medalist, you know, but it's like, but that's not the case, right? So
I'm so happy.
You have to understand the exercise to teach it, but you don't have to be able to physically do it to teach it.
And that was a big thing for me. That was big.
Yeah. And I think that is a big misconception that a lot of people have, that you have to be, you know, not only just able to do them, but be perfect at all of the moves. And unless you've got an extensive background in gymnastics or high level dance, it's like you're not going to be perfect. And there's a whole, like, thousands of people hopefully breathing a sigh of relief out there in the Pilates stratosphere right now who don't have a background in gymnastics and dance, and who know that there are certain exercises that they suck at. And whether for you that's like high bridge or rocking, or whether it's teaser on the long box or horseback, you know, like there are so many that you can choose from, snake and twist, that are really, really challenging. You know, control balance on the mat. Like there are some really real doozies.
Yeah.
And for each of us, we each have our own strengths and flexibilities. And, you know, some of us, you know, rocking comes easily, but rollovers are really challenging. Others of us, vice versa. And others of us, both of those are easy, but maybe long stretch is really challenging, you know. And so there's no rule that says you have to be perfect at all the moves. It's like, it's not a thing. And I think it's just social media that we get this, you know, like, because we've got 7.5 billion people in the world, and on social media, the ones that get the biggest like number of likes, they're the ones that look the best doing it usually. So we have this kind of artificial sense of, you're supposed to be perfect at all the moves. But of course we don't. Even the people who are perfect at doing the things on social media, of course, we don't see the things that they're not perfect at, right? Because they don't do those, or if they do, they don't get the likes. Yeah. So, you know, I definitely stick my hand up and go, I suck at high bridge. I hate rocking. I don't mind control balance and rollover, but I hate crab as well. I always get a headache when I do crab.
Oh yeah. I can't get my head down. There are just too much.
Yeah, and you know, when you're teaching those exercises, like, I mean, I basically never teach crab because I haven't really met anyone who really loves it ever. But there are some exercises that I suck at that I would teach regularly. Things like swan and, you know, high bridge, like in certain classes, like more advanced clients, you know, would like to do that, and I can't do that to save my life. But that doesn't mean you can't teach it. Like you can either just talk people through it. Once you're clear on the progression, you can get a student in the class who can do it and say, hey, will you be the demo, you know, person for this exercise? Like, there's so many ways that you can teach it without physically doing it yourself. So yeah. All right. So sorry. I got sidetracked there. So, you know, do you think that, you know, so your experience as a 66-year-old, you know, doing a certification program, like part of it was you were kind of the most organized and take charge person in the room, right? You were like, okay, I'm not here to muck around. I'm here to practice. I'm here to learn. Okay, let's get going. So you do this, you do that, you do this. Okay. So that was good. That was my experience actually at university as well. When I was doing like group projects, I was the organizer, and, you know, apart from that, was there anything else like that was different about training, you know, certifying at 66 years old that you think that would be different at, say, 26 years old?
I don't know. I think maybe at an older age, I was more focused. I didn't have more going on in my life. Like, you know, at 26, like some of the women that were in my group, so to speak, you know, who had to go to work and who had little kids. And, you know, I didn't have any of that. I was able to do my coursework when I wanted to, pretty much, and focus on it. And, you know, except for, you know, my vacations, which is something that I like to do, I was able to focus on it more, I think. And it wasn't easy, but I think that's a big part of it. I had more time to do it.
Yeah, that's a good observation. So I think I'm observing that in myself now. Like our daughter just turned 16, and so she's basically looks at, she makes her own meals and takes herself to school and does all those things. And I think back to when she was like 4 years old, and you basically had to do everything, with and for her, and her attention span was like 5 minutes. And so basically there was no such thing as an uninterrupted hour, for more than a decade there. But yeah, now at this age, you do start to feel that you have more time and more ability to focus and choose how you spend your time. Yeah. So, what's next for you? Like, what is this second career going to look like for you?
Well, I'll tell you, I am retired, so I'm not going out and working for a big studio or anything like that. I actually have 2 clients now that I teach at home. They both come twice a week. And besides helping them move and making them feel good, by doing that, it makes me feel good. Like when one of my clients after a class says, wow, I feel so good, or I can't wait to come back, that just does something for me. It makes me feel good knowing that they enjoyed themselves, that they got what they needed. And you know what? I think that's all I want. I'd like to have maybe a handful of students coming a couple of times a week here. I don't feel, I'm retired. I don't feel like going out anywhere. I don't feel like going out in the winter and driving in the snow. I just want people to come to me and to help them feel better. I don't need, I'm comfortable financially. I don't have a lot of money. I'm comfortable financially. I don't need to make a lot of money. I want people to feel good, and I want to enjoy myself. I don't want to burn out. I want to be able to do my own practice and to help other people. And that's about it. Give me 5 people, come twice a week. I'll be happy.
That's awesome. And I see, I think the wisdom of age there in the way you're setting that up is like, yeah, you don't want to go out in the snow and traipse around, and you just want people to come to you, and so you want it the way you want it. And yeah, that's been my experience as I've gotten older as well, is I'm sort of less eager to please.
Yeah.
And more interested in doing it the way that suits me. So how did you, so firstly, what have you got a reformer and set up in your home? Is that what you teach?
I do. I've, of course, like a lot of other people during the pandemic, I bought a reformer, secondhand. And then about 6 months ago, I bought a chair. So I'm working on the apparatus course. And yeah, again, I don't like being in debt, so I save to buy stuff. So right now I'm saving for a vertical frame for my reformer. So I have the tower, and I'm looking forward to getting that one day, maybe after the holidays. So I have the reformer, the chair. I have it in my family room downstairs. I made a little spot for it. I have a Newla's poster up, and I have my Breathe Education certificate up there, and it's in a little spot in the family room. The women that are coming, they feel comfortable there. I was going to try to make like a little studio in another part of my basement, but it's not very aesthetically pleasing there, and I would have to put a lot into it. This is pleasing to them. It's soothing. It's a comfortable place, and it works. It works.
How did you attract those clients?
Well, one of them follows me on Instagram. Both of them, I've taken classes with both of them. They both took classes in the studio in my hometown here, and one of them followed like my journey on Instagram. And once she saw I was certified, she contacted me, and she said she was waiting for me to get my certificate so she could take classes with me. She didn't want to go to the studio anymore. And the other one had stopped going to the studio, and she also reached out to me. So they both have been taking classes for a while, but hadn't taken them for many months like they used to take classes. And yeah, and it's awesome. It's awesome because they have a little background, so they're not brand new. And yeah, and they're really enjoying it, and I am too. So, and I'd like I said, I'd like to get a couple more people, but I also want them to be referrals. I don't want to advertise, this is my home. I don't want just anyone coming into my home. So I could wait. And once, if anybody else comes, if I get a referral, that's fine. So I guess they were tired of going to the group. I don't know, for whatever reason, the group class. And it's a lot different here, though. I know in Australia, your group classes they're very big, right? Here,
Yeah.
the most I've seen is maybe 6 or 7 in a class. So it's a little different. But I'm good where I'm at.
You sound amazing where you're at. So this is I guess maybe second career is a little bit inaccurate. Like maybe it's like I don't know, like it's a fantastic complement to your retirement or something. Like do you think that's true or not? Or do you see it as a second career?
I could see it as a second career because I'm doing it. I mean, I don't know, does a second career have to be full time? No. Does it have to make you a ton of money? No. I spent time on it. I'm also, like, I took a workshop with Adam McAtee on programming. I signed up for your visual anatomy course. So I'm learning more. So it's taken time. And who knows? I might decide to do more. I might one day decide to open up a studio, or I don't know if I really want to work for anybody else, but
yeah.
But I think it's like it's a second career. It's just a slow starting second career for me.
Well, I love the way you've designed your life to be the way you want it, and you take your holidays to go visit your grandkids. I know, and that's important to you, and that you also have other hobbies, and gardening, and reading, and painting, and that this is also something that's very important to you, and you make time and space for it in a way that's sustainable and meaningful and rewarding. So, like you're living the dream, Loretta.
I am. I'm living the dream, and I'm loving it. and I gotta say, it's good, and I really gotta thank Anula Myberg, because she was such an inspiration. She is such an inspiration to me, and all the other people I follow on Instagram. I know not everybody. I don't follow negative people. I try to follow positive people. Breathe Education did so much for me. They really did. And again, the classmates, we have a community. And when I go out to Arizona, one of the women in my class lives out there. I'm going to see her and, get together with other people and just keep going, and trying to help as many people as I can move, whether they're young or old. And, another thing we didn't touch on, but is important to me too, my Instagram account is Anybody Pilates. And I don't have what a lot of people would consider a quote unquote Pilates body. And I want to show people that anybody can do Pilates. So when I put a Pilates t-shirt on, I walk down the street, I want people to say, this body does Pilates. And it doesn't have to be any kind of specific body type. And that's important to me too.
Yeah, and I know that's also a super core part of Anula's, mission is that exact message. And I totally resonate and respect with that. Resonate with and respect that. I think that's really valuable. I think we get to see so many, and there's nothing wrong with dancers. I love dancers. Dancers are wonderful, but we get to see so many dancers doing Pilates because, let's face it, they move gracefully, right? And that's the whole point. And so I'm no dancer, and I have this, I guess, basically clumsy, oafish body. Like, I can't text type. I always hit the wrong things because my thumbs are too fat, and I can't be graceful and balletic. That's not in my DNA. But I don't think that's got nothing to do with nothing. It's like, it doesn't matter what shape you are, how long your legs are, what split you can do, or anything. Like, that's not what Pilates is about.
No, it's about moving. Just move and enjoy it and feel it. And
100%.
That I just love it. I'll get on my reformer and while I'm doing footwork or feet in straps, and I'll close my eyes and just get in the zone. And I love it. And I like to see other people do it like that too.
And that's, from everything I've been able to understand, that was what Joseph aimed for as well, is that flow state of achieving where your mind basically stops thinking and you just exist in the moment. That's what it's for. Exactly.
And it works.
Sure does. Loretta, thanks so much. This has been awesome. You're awesome.
Thank you so much for having me, Raph. I really appreciate it. I was really nervous, but you made me feel very comfortable. And and I'm looking forward to getting back to my reformer as soon as I feel a little better.
Yeah, well, you're an articulate human, and you've got a lot of, I think, valuable things to say. So I'm sure a lot of people got a lot from this, and thank you.
Thanks again.